Welcome back, and thanks for the second half hour of Friends at 5.
Well, we just saw the plane taking off from Shelby, North Carolina, on the way back here to Charleston. With it, inside of it, 21-year-old Dylann Roof. He waived his extradition this afternoon, which means, like we said, he is on his way right now on a plane back to Charleston to face multiple murder charges. He's accused of gunning down and killing 9 people inside of Mother Emanuel AME Church. The Lexington County resident was wearing a bulletproof vest as police took him out of the courthouse to appear before a judge in Shelby, North Carolina, where he was apprehended earlier this morning.
The shooting deaths of those 9 has been deemed to be a hate crime now, and the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division, the FBI, and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of South Carolina are all involved in the ongoing investigation.
Before we get to other aspects of this story, we want to let you know the names of all 9 of these victims. They were released earlier today. The first and probably most well-known here in Columbia, a well-known South Carolina Democratic leader and reverend at the Emanuel AME Church, Clemente Pinckney. The 41-year-old was a married father of 2. Here you see him speaking at Allen University, where he graduated. He was first elected to the State House of Representatives in 1996 at the age of 23 years old, and then he was elected to the Senate back in 2000. Next, 45-year-old Reverend Sharonda Singleton, a mother and a pastor at the church. She was also a high school track coach. Her son has been tweeting out how much she is missed. The youngest victim, this man, Tywanza Sanders. He was a 2014 graduate of Allen University. He was so excited to start his career in business administration. He just graduated. Another mother, 59-year-old Myra Thompson. She was an active member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. A grandmother, 70-year-old Ethel Lee Lance. She had worked at that church for more than 30 years. Susie Jackson, the oldest woman who was killed. She was Lance's cousin. She was gathered at the church for Bible study and prayer. She was 87 years old. DePayne Middleton Doctor was 49 years old. She sang in the church choir. She leaves behind 4 daughters. 54-year-old Cynthia Hurd worked at the Charleston County Library for 31 years. To honor her today, all of the library's 16 locations are closed today. 74-year-old Daniel Simmons, he was a retired pastor from another church. His family says he was a faithful member of Emanuel AME. He was there every Sunday for services and also every Wednesday night for the Bible study that was going on when the suspect walked in and opened fire.
As we mentioned a few moments ago, the man suspected in the deadly mass shooting waived extradition a few moments ago. He was actually caught just before 11 o'clock this morning in Shelby, North Carolina. 21-year-old Dylann Roof. Shelby, North Carolina is roughly about 245 miles away from Charleston. Now, according to his Facebook page, Roof went to White Knoll High School. Right after he was arrested, a press conference was held this morning by Charleston's police chief and by Charleston Mayor Joe Riley.
This case could not have been cleared as quickly as it has been if it had not been for the cooperation, the unparalleled cooperation of all the different agencies that were involved in this investigation. I cannot say how thankful I am and how appreciative I am of all the people who came together during a very tragic situation, a horrific situation, and one that has touched the heart and soul of every person who lives in this community.
I thank everyone who's here, and as Chief Mullen said, the media, because we are able to arrest this awful person in Shelby, North Carolina, because we got the word out. And it's a good sign, wonderful sign, that in America, you know, we don't let bad people like this get away with these dastardly deeds. Thank you.
Well, Clemente Pinckney had been a state lawmaker for years. He, of course, was the pastor at Emmanuel AME Church. He was called to preaching at the age of 13, according to their website. You might remember his name recently in the news because he was one of the legislators that was pushing hard to make sure police had to wear body cameras. He believed that that would help protect lives. Mark Sanford was another person who was talking about what a great a person Pinckney was. He said he was a remarkable human being. He had a gravely deep voice that everybody will remember.
Over at the State House today, a black cloth with a vase of flowers was placed over his seat in the Senate chambers. This image was tweeted by South Carolina Senate Democrats with the message, "We love you, Senator. Thank you for your service."
Folks are mourning the deaths of those 9 people all over the country, but especially hitting hard in Charleston, South Carolina.
That is where our Darcy Strickland is stationed tonight. We're going to check in with her to find out what's going on. Darcy, a difficult day to say the least in the Low Country.
JR, Andrea, you're exactly right about that. In my hands, I'm holding the program for the prayer vigil that was held at Morris Brown AME Church this afternoon. Hundreds of mourners were inside of that church, but what was even more interesting to me were the hundreds of people who were outside of the church. The church doors opened, and within minutes, the fire marshal was there, law enforcement was there, saying that the church had reached capacity and they were no longer letting people in. But that did not stop people from getting together and mourning together outside of the church. Obviously, not as many people outside of the church mourning as there were inside, but those people made sure to let their voice be heard through song. News 19's Stephen Dial was there this afternoon as well. Stephen, I didn't make it into the church until almost towards the end of the program. They even stopped media from going inside because there were so many people there, but you did have an opportunity to go in, at least for the first part of the service.
Yeah, law enforcement tried to be media friendly and give us a look of inside the church, and the atmosphere, of course, was emotional. A lot of people were talking all day, saying that they were in shock, and some were just looking in disbelief, not knowing what to think of what happened last night. But like you mentioned, outside, hundreds of people were outside paying their respects to those who lost their lives as well. There was standing room only inside Morris Brown AME Church. So many, in fact, that hundreds of people stood outside to hold their own vigil in efforts to heal.
For a person to do an act of this nature is just unbelievable.
Me and my sister were together crying this morning. Now I just want to come out and support and praise God for what he's doing.
Less than 24 hours after a mass murder that killed 9 people at Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, those in the community are still in shock. But seeing all generations and races come together was a sobering atmosphere for most.
I think what you're seeing here, people join together, that's what America's about, and I don't think we should let 1 or 2 people in our world that displayed the action of last night be a character of who we all really are, that really in Christ we're to love one another, and Jesus says we're to love each other in that kind of love.
Philip Pinckney believes the problem is more than a racial issue. It's on a spiritual level.
I think it's a great first step. It's great to see not just one color, one race, not one age group. It's good to see everybody here working together. It's good to hear Jesus Christ being preached, right? We can send him to jail, we can pass laws, but ultimately, unless God changes the hearts of men, we're going to be back here next year, next week, next month.
And Darcy, you know, law enforcement officials recently just opened the street where the church is, so a lot of people dropping off flowers and paying their respects. And, you know, this won't end today. It'll be for the duration of this week at least.
We've got a long time to mourn these 9 people, and as you just said, Stephen, law enforcement still working to make sure that anybody who does want to mourn these people who have lost their lives, to grieve with the community, can do that in a safe and an effective way, and that happened today at Morris Brown AME Church. Hard to believe when you see scenes like what's behind us now, you know, things that are characteristically Charleston, with the water and the boats and the bridges, that less than half a mile away, the worst mass murder in this historic city's history. So we're going to send things back to you all in the studio. Coming up tonight at 6 o'clock, we're going to talk more about what happened at the prayer vigil and how the community is staying Charleston strong. Andrea, JR?
All right, Darcy, Stephen, thank you so much.
Earlier today, authorities were at a house on Garner's Ferry Road in Eastover because that was the last known address of Roof. We were the first on the scene there as authorities appear to be questioning the homeowner. It's right across the street from well-known Mr. Bunky's, and he tells us about 40 to 60 law enforcement officers were there at about 8 o'clock this morning. They literally swarmed the area. That number grew less throughout the day, and once the suspect was apprehended, we got a chance to talk to people in the neighborhood there, and here's what they had to say after learning that the suspect was from literally their own backyard.
Wow, but now that I'm knowing and thinking about it, how close and how good God is, because we don't know why God and how God is protecting us from all we don't even know about right here in the community.
Everybody's going to be a lot more cautious because the way it's going now, you don't know where to go at, where it's safe, because you can't trust anybody anymore, because the way things is going, you don't know.
Well, obviously, there, people in Eastover were very surprised to hear that the last known address of Roof was from right down the road.
Well, U.S. Senate Minority Leader Senator Harry Reid expressed his sympathies and the sympathies of the U.S. Senate this morning on the Senate floor. Take a listen.
I don't know how else to describe it. This individual was like a sheep in wolf's clothing. He sat among the congregation for a substantial amount of time before he pulled out a weapon and started firing at people. The thought of people who were in a house of worship being gunned down as they gathered to pray is heart-wrenching, devastating, and is the ultimate act of cowardice and hatred.
In light of the massacre, Senator Lindsey Graham canceled his political schedule for the rest of the weekend to get back here to South Carolina. He reached the shootings from New York City today.
Tough time for people in South Carolina, heartbreaking. I know the church well, I know the pastor, and I can't even imagine what it was going through somebody's head to sit in church with somebody for an hour and shoot people.
Senator Graham was scheduled to deliver remarks in Philadelphia tomorrow and then campaign in New Hampshire over the weekend, but once again, those events have been canceled.
And a reminder to visit our website, WLTX.com, for the latest information. Also, be sure to follow us on Twitter. We're using the hashtag #PrayForCharleston. All right, stay with us. We'll be right back.
The Midland's most accurate forecast with Chief Meteorologist Jim Gandy.
We've had thunderstorms pop up this afternoon. Now, a lot of the initial activity has moved on off toward the east. You can see these thunderstorms in the PD region. A lot of the rain to our southeast is fading, but we have other thunderstorms that have popped up. As a result of these thunderstorms, the outflow has now reached into the northern part of the Midlands. We've got thunderstorms that have been building in Kershaw and Fairfield County, and a severe thunderstorm warning in effect from near Winnsboro all the way to Bishopville until 6:30 tonight. The main threat is going to be high winds, and there could be some large hail. But today, many of the severe weather reports have been from some thunderstorm winds that have knocked down trees and power lines and that sort of thing. And we also have a severe thunderstorm over around Greenwood at this point. This is the main thunderstorm complex that we're watching in northern Kershaw County. It's moving to the east at about 15 to 20 miles per hour. Currently in Columbia, we still have some clouds. The rain has ended. Our temperature 80 degrees, cooled down from 101, the high today. But it is a bit muggy outside, so our heat index is at 84. Winds are from the south at 13 miles per hour. Tonight, still a chance for some thunderstorms, a low of 76, and tomorrow we're expecting the same sort of thing. We'll see sun in the morning, thunderstorms in the afternoon, the high temperature 98 degrees. But then that chance for rain starts to diminish over the weekend. 99 on Saturday, we'll start warming up, and by the time we get to Tuesday, up to 102 degrees. I think next week will be a little bit hotter than what we saw this week. We'll be back after this word.
Earlier today, state senators gathered at the State House to remember their friend and their colleague, Clemente Pinckney, who was shot and killed last night while at Bible study at the church where he's a pastor in Charleston.
Our Jasmine Stiles talked to one senator who says his death is not going to be in vain.
That could have been me. That could have been my church here in Richland County.
Senator Darrell Jackson sat in the Senate chambers listening to colleagues remember Senator Clemente Pinckney, who was shot and killed at his church in Charleston during Bible study.
He never promoted himself, and he was on the Health and Human Service Subcommittee, and he worked hard for the SNAP program, and he worked for sickle cell funding. The reason why the sickle cell foundations across South Carolina are funded today is because of Clemente Pinckney.
The chamber was packed with people standing on the wall and filling the balcony. Years ago, Jackson says threats were made against him and his family, and says former SLED Chief Robert Stewart told him there was a reason.
He said that I had, and Pinckney probably had more threats than most of the average legislators because we were ministers. And he says when you combine that with a public official and you combine that with being a minister, and you're always up front and talking, that there will be deranged people that will be fascinated or fixated on you.
Jackson says the threat started when he was speaking out on taking the Confederate flag off the top of the State House. He's had to take precautions at Bible Way Church where he preaches.
Based on SLED's recommendation, we do hire patrol during our service, and people often wonder, they say, why is that? Is that going overboard? Because there have been ministers in other parts of the country who've also lost their life.
Now Jackson wants to bring the topic of hate crimes back into the spotlight.
And I will refile my bill to do that. And I think in light of what has happened with Senator Pinckney, perhaps we'll get more traction on that. Not passing that bill could also send a very sad message. But I am confident that my colleagues will do the right thing.
Jasmine Stiles, News 19 WLTX.
Well, the president and the U.S. Attorney General have characterized this as a hate crime.
Yes, hoping that legislation goes through in Pinckney's honor because it was something he was very passionate about. Other senators speaking out today, I think the most powerful was seeing Vincent Shaheen get extremely emotional when he was talking about Pinckney, and he said he was the most gentle of all 46 of us in this chamber, and he was the best of all 46 of us in this chamber, and he is the one who lost his life. You know, our state senators who we watch every day hold it together, and to see them shaken to this point, it just speaks to the depth of who this man was to them and to our state. Yeah,
the Lieutenant Governor, Henry McMaster, also having a few moments of difficulty controlling his emotions today as well. Just heartbreaking pictures to see, not only from what's happening in Charleston, but the reaction from our area leaders, because they're just so moved and touched by the horrific tragedies that have happened, remembering their friend and just reflecting back on everything.
If you didn't understand the legacy and the person that Senator Clemente Pinckney was before today, you certainly do now by seeing those reactions. Stay with us. We're going to have continuing coverage of the massacre in Charleston.
Well, since word broke last night of the tragedy in Charleston, a lot of people have been asking, how can I help? And the city of Charleston has come up with a way for people to actually help out the victims. Charleston Mayor Joe Riley saying today the city's created a fund in the church's name. It's going to be used for people to help victims, including things such as funeral expenses. To help, you can go to any Wells Fargo location to donate. They're also working to set up a place where people can mail in donations as well.
Still waiting for that plane to take off at Shell.